Everybody, it's 5 o'clock on a Saturday. That means it is time for photography with me, Hayden Greene. I am your host, and I will be walking you through a bunch of different things about photography today. And every week we tackle a different idea. We tackle a different project, a different program. A different problem sometimes, and we're just going to get into it. All right. So enough of the introduction, or except to tell you that I am a Brooklyn-based photographer, and I learned, I am self-taught. Therefore, I can teach you, and then you can go off and learn for yourself and be much better than I am. All right. So today we are talking about lenses. Okay. So we're going to talk about prime lenses, variable lenses. We're going to talk about fixed lenses. We're going to talk about the numbers on the side of these lenses. That's why I'm wearing my glasses today, because I want to make sure that I can actually read the numbers on the side of the lenses. And if we get through enough, we will talk a little bit about these things. These are called extension tubes, and these are really, really fun, especially if you're getting into wedding photography or if you're getting into macro botanical photography. So we'll get to the extension tubes at the end, which means you got to stick around. All right. So as always, the deal. If you get a tip, leave a tip, and I'm going to put my Cash App up here, and we're going to pin that so that you are able to, at any point in time, if you feel the need and you feel you feel like you want to, you can let me know. Hey, listen, I really enjoyed that. Here's some money, and it's not pinning. Oh, I'll scroll it back. All right, so let's start off with what a lens is. So it sounds pretty simple, but a lens is a collection of glass. And as a matter of fact, you will hear photographers refer to them as buying glass or getting glass for my camera, right? Or you'll hear photographers say it's like you can keep glass and change bodies, all right? But so this is a lens, one version of a lens, and this is also a lens. And what is the difference between the two of these? There's a lot. But the basic breakdown of what's happening in here is that there are a bunch of concave and convex glass plates inside of the body of this thing, right? And what they do is they take the light that you see and either bend it out, bend it back in, and then bend it to a way that you are able to see it on either the film or the sensor that you have at the back of your camera, right? So your lens is the thing that is shaping the light that's coming into your camera. Now, lenses doesn't always have to be glass. There are things called pinhole cameras. And you can go research this. You can actually make your own pinhole camera. You can actually buy a pinhole camera attachment for one of your cameras, any one of your cameras, right? So a pinhole camera is simply what it sounds like. It's a piece of paper or a piece of plastic or something like that with a pinhole in it. And what it's doing is taking the light and forcing it into a really, really small opening. And when that light comes in on the other side, so this does this and this does this, it flattens back out. It opens back out onto your sensor, right? So a pinhole camera doesn't have any glass. So, but it is a lens. And so, but for the purpose of today, we're going to be talking about the lenses that have actual glass in it. All right. So here's the caveat. Well, not the caveat, but here's the disclaimer. All of which I'm talking to you about applies to all different types of cameras. It even kind of applies to point and shoot cameras where the lens is actually fixed and attached to the actual body of the camera and you can't take it off. If you look at your point and shoot camera, that lens that's fixed to the body actually has some of the same denotations that I'm going to be talking about here. Okay, so That's number one. And if you're using a phone camera, so you may not have this built in to your actual lens, although if you dig down enough and if you look through the specs of your camera, you can actually start to find where they describe some of the things that I'm going to be talking about. But the good thing about this is now there are a bunch of attachments that you can buy for your phone cameras. So, and they will have some of the same things that we're talking about today. All right, so let's get started. If you have any questions, I see Zimmy, I see Longshot. Oh, what's up, my man? And so if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm watching the chat, so I'll answer them as you go along. All right. So let's start with the thing that is one of the first basic things that you need to know about a lens, and that is what millimeter it is. What is the range of your lens? So I'm holding a 50 millimeter lens, right? And so if you look right here, it says, let's get that in focus. It says 50 millimeters right there, okay? And 50 millimeters refers to what the angle of the lens is. How much of your scene your lens is going to be able to take, right? And so the way that you want to look at it, if this is the horizon, your angle here, this angle here, is how much of the scene you're going to be able to take on. So 50 millimeters is about 50, and it's really a focal length, but if you're a cheat for this, so don't y'all hit me up with this, is 50 millimeters means that this is the distance of the focal length, right? But the cheat of it is that the higher the number, the higher this angle is over here. So if you have a 8 millimeter, that angle is going to be all the way down here. If you have a 50 millimeter, it's going to be closer to here, which means that comparable on the other side, this is how much of the scene you're going to be able to see. And if you had an 8 millimeter comparable, it would be this much of the scene that you will be able to see. That's shorthand. It's a lot more technical than that. And I know that it is, but this is the basic. So, and what I want to get you to is when you're looking at lenses, there are hundreds. I mean, like every camera that you have, there are hundreds of choices of lenses that you can make. And what I want to get you to is being able to decipher between all of the numbers and all of the things here. Wow, I'm sweating already. Wow, it's a hot day in New York City. So what I'm trying to get you to is shorthand so that you know what you're looking at. So the lower the number, the wider the angle of the lens is going to be. The higher the number, the steeper the angle is going to be, and the narrower that your plane of focus is going to have, right? And so that brings me to the next thing that we want to talk about: the difference between wide angle lenses and everything else, right? So this is a 50 millimeter. So the 50 millimeter, sometimes by photographers, is called the Nifty 50. And the Nifty 50 really talks, is called that because a lot of photographers love that, especially for, just taking pictures out in the environment, because the 50 millimeter is probably the closest estimation as to the angle of focus that you have with your natural eye, right? So when you look through a camera using a 50 millimeter, you tend to be able to see what's in the camera. It tends to be a really close representation of just how much you would be able to see if you were just using your natural eyes, right? And so that's one of the reasons why people love the Nifty 50. And so this is a 50 millimeter. This is a Rokinon, and this is what are we on here? This is a fisheye, and this is 12 millimeter, which means that this is wide open. This has almost, I forget what the numbers are, but this has, so if you're thinking 180, this has almost 12 minus about 160 degrees of 160 degrees of angle. So you can see everything from here. So like if you're thinking about your eyes, if you can see everything from your peripheral view all the way all to the other side. A lot of times when you're using 50 millimeters, it is a lot of people were like, oh, or sorry, fish eyes. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm not in the picture. Yes, you are in the picture. Trust me, it is a very, very wide angle. So a fish eye is the widest of the wide, and it has you can see a little bit of a belly, a concave on the top of the lens, and that gives it just exactly what you would expect it. Gives it kind of like a rounded picture. So when you see a lot of fisheye pictures, if they have not been corrected, it looks like, as the name tells you, it looks like if you're looking through an aquarium tank, and it has that distortion around the end of it. All right, so this is a fisheye. A fisheye is an extreme wide angle lens. This is another wide angle lens. This is my 17 to 40, all right? And we'll talk about what the 17 to 40 means in a second. But at its widest, this opens all the way up to 17, which means that when you open it up, you have a pretty decent wide picture. This is essential. If you are doing any kind of group photography, you kind of have to have a wide angle lens. You want to get a lens that gets as many people in a group as possible without having to back all the way up, right? And so here, this is a wide angle lens. So we have a nifty 50, and then we have a wide angle. And this is in the category of ultra wide, but this is a fisheye lens. All right. And again, you can tell how wide they are by how low the numbers are here. So this goes down. This is a 17 to 40. And so this goes all the way down to 17. This is, what did I say? 12. So this goes all the way down to 12. I've had fisheyes that are 8, which means you're almost looking behind you at that point. This is a 50. And so it's a little bit more constricted. It's a little bit in here. This, oh Jesus, this is so heavy. This is a 70 to 200. So that's 50, and this is even tighter than the 50, right? So this comes in there. All right. So those are, when you look at millimeters, those are the things that you can expect when you pick up a lens that says that it's this thing or that thing. All right. All right. So we've been talking about 50 meter, and then you heard me say 17 to 40, and then you heard me say 70 to 200. And what that means, and this one is just a 12, right? What that means is that those are two different types of lenses. So when you see, and all of this stuff is right here, right? So when you see a lens that says, where are we? Right here, 70 to 200. When you see that 70 to 200, that dash in between the two numbers, when it comes to millimeters, or you just see millimeters and there is no dash, it's just a number and the millimeter on the actual lens. It's the difference between a fixed lens and a telephoto lens, or a zoom lens. All right. So telephoto and fixed lens are two different types of lenses. This is a fixed lens. This is a 50. So this means that there is zero zoom on this lens. What does that mean? It means that when you put this lens on the camera and you see something that you want to get closer to, that you want to get a closer picture of, you have to walk the camera to the actual picture, right? There is no zoom on this kind of lens, right? So you have 50 millimeters, no zoom, no dash. No dash means no zoom. We have a 70 to 200 lens. It means that I can go from a 70 focal range all the way down to 200, which means that I go from here to all the way there nice and tight, but now my focal length is all the way down. So I can sit here and zoom into something that is further away from me. I cannot do that with a fixed lens, right? So when you see just a number, like for instance, this is just 12, right? I cannot zoom with this lens. When you see just a number, there is no zoom, all right? When you see a dash between one number and the other, it means that there is an aspect of zoom, right? So this is also a zoom lens. This is a 70 to 40. Now, the difference between this and this is that it is a very large, it's a large zoom range, right? So this is actually called a telephoto, I can't speak, a telephoto lens. This is a telephoto lens, right? Which means it's like a telescope. That's what you want to think of. It's a telescopic lens, which means that I can pull people in from far away. This is also a zoom lens. It is not a telephoto lens, right? It means that if I'm standing here, some of the things that are far away, I can pull back in. So if I started off with a big picture, I can pull it in a little bit closer by zooming in just a little bit more. Does not have a whole lot of zoom on it. Not a telephoto. There are things that are called extreme telephotos. Extreme telephotos are like 70 to 300, 70 to 400, and then you'll see stuff like photographers on sports games, especially football or soccer, which is football and football to me, all right? Will stand on the sidelines and zoom in from one sideline all the way down to the goalpost on the other sideline and get a crisp, sharp picture, all right? So those are telephoto lenses, and those are extreme telephoto lenses. For those of you who are joining, just, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask at any point in time. Also, I am going to try to pin, but it is down here somewhere, and it is not wanting to pin because you know what? Technology doesn't like me, right? So if you get a tip, leave a tip on the Cash App. And I apologize for my glasses today. I actually need to read some of the stuff that's on here. All right. So we talked about zoom. We talked about telephoto. We talked about extreme telephoto lenses. So we need to talk a little bit about the dials on here, the sliders, right? So when you look at a lens, you'll see the numbers. If it is a telephoto, you'll see the numbers from which you can, from the lowest to the highest. So this changes. You see here? This changes. So right now, this is as wide as the lens can be. So you're looking at a 70 millimeter focal length right now. If I wanted to zoom in, this is as tight and as far away as I can pull something in at 200. So that's this dial up here. This is your focus dial. Now, hope you can see that. Yes. So when you focus, if you look in here, you'll see the focal point start to move, right? So it goes from 1.4 all the way up to infinity, right? And so that's the different kinds of focal lengths. Sorry, not the focal length, the focal points. And so you are able to switch and go back and forth using both of those things. So you might zoom something all the way in and it's now out of focus. You can now adjust the focus with this dial over here. You also have, and this one has a whole bunch of different dials, but this one over here is an autofocus. So this, you can hit your autofocus button on your camera and it will focus for you automatically using the focal points that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. This, on the other hand, is a manual lens, right? So there is no zoom on this and you have to adjust the focus yourself, right? And so one of the tricks of the trade is that if you put it on infinity, everything from the front of the camera to wherever is supposed to be in focus, depending on what aperture you're using. So if you had it wide open, sorry, if you had a large aperture and you put it on infinity, conceptually everything should be in focus. But this is a manual lens, which means that it has no automation in it. I love these lenses because they're a little bit less expensive, but it forces you to use your noggin. Okay? All right, where are we on time? All right, we're good. All right, so I want to talk about fixed lenses versus prime lenses versus non-prime lenses. So this Nifty 50 is a prime lens. This is a, where is my thing? This is a 1.4 aperture, right? So it's right here. And you see the number, it says 1 to 1.4. What that means is that no matter where you focus this lens, the lens will be able to get down, and that's the important part, down to 1.4 aperture, its lowest aperture, no matter what. And this is more important, and I'll show you when we show a kit lens. This is also a prime lens, right? So this is a 2.8, right? So you see the notations here. It's 1:2.8, right? There is no dash after the 2.8. That means that this is a fixed lens. It means that at the 70 millimeter focal length, you will be able to stop this lens down all the way to 2.8. If you extend it all the way up to the 200 focal length, you will still be able to get down to 2.8. That's very important because, especially for nature photography and stuff like that, if you have a zoom lens and when you're close up, you're able to get down to a low aperture. But when you extend it out, the lowest that you're able to get to is something that you're not desiring. That doesn't work for nature photographers or for sports photographers as well. And that's why people love prime lenses. They know that no matter where it is on this on these focal lengths, I'm going to be able to get to the lowest aperture when I need to. Now I can go to the higher ones. It means that it doesn't mean that you have to stay with the lowest aperture, but you can go to the higher ones. Okay. How is that different? So prime lenses are different from variable lenses, or what people describe as kit lenses. Kit lenses or variable lenses are not bad lenses. I'm gonna say that again. Kit lenses or variable lenses are not bad lenses. I have taken some of the pictures that I love the most with variable lenses. This was one of my favorite lenses. And I say was because, as you can tell, it is completely destroyed because I dropped this. So this is my Tamron lens, and I really love it. But as you can see here, it is 1 to 3.5 at a 6 and a dash is 6.3. What this means, and this was a 28 to 300. What this means, yes, a 28 to 300. What this means is that when I am at 28, which is the widest that this lens will open, I can go all the way down to a 3.5 on my aperture. But when I extend this lens, to 300, which I just did, right? When I extend this lens to 300, the lowest aperture that I can get to is a 6.3. So now if I had taken a picture really close up and I was like, oh, there's something like what I just took close up, but I want to get it further away, bird or person in a crowd, but I want that same aperture, I'm not going to be able to do that with this lens. I can only get down to 6.3 when it is at its largest focal length. And that's the main difference why you hear people talking about prime lenses and they love prime lenses. But don't get caught up. This is one of my favorite lenses, and one of these days I'm going to replace it, when the business opens back up and I'm actually able to make some money. All right, so I love this lens, and I dropped it, and I'm very, very sad about it. As you can tell, I haven't gotten over it yet because I still bring it out. I haven't thrown it away. Can you imagine you drop something and completely destroy it, and I still have it? All right, so That's the difference when you see a dash in between the aperture ratings on your thing. So this is prime. It has one number. Variable has two numbers with a dash in between it. It means that at the bottom of the zoom, at the widest focal length on the zoom, it will get to the lowest aperture on the aperture number there. When it is at the highest number of the zoom, you can only get to the highest number on the aperture listed there. All right, so that's the difference between the two of those. There is another number that a lot of people don't recognize or don't know what it's for. Let's see if I can find one on this one. I know it's on that one over there. I just want to see if I can find it here. Here it is. Sometimes it's a little sneaky. It is. So if you look inside here, there's another number sitting right in there, right? And it has a zero with a line going through it, and another number. And so this one is 77 meters. 77 millimeters, right? What that means is that this is the circumference or the diameter of the opening at the front of the lens. Why is that important? Photographers lose lens caps all the time. And when you have to rebuy a lens cap, you have to know what size lens cap is. That's the size of the opening of your lens. But it also means when you're buying filters for your lenses, you need to know what size that is, or any kind of attachments for the front of the lens. What you may not know, if you haven't really looked at it, is that most lenses, if not all, have grooves where you can screw things into, right? And that's what the lens cap clips onto, but they have grooves that you can screw into. So if you have a screw-in filter, you need to know what size that is, and you'll find that right here. On the 70 to 200, it's sitting up here, right? And then sometimes it's a little bit harder to find. I could not find it on my 50, and I don't know why. But yeah, I can't find it on my 50. But if you do the research, it's listed. You know, every lens has like a bunch of information sitting around on the on internet trying to tell you exactly what you need. All right. While I have it here, this is a hood. Sits right on top of the lens. You'll see people walking around, especially when they have a 70 to 200. You'll see people walking around with the hood still attached to the front. I don't want to break it. It's not fitting. It's supposed to be a 70s. They're both 70s. You see? Don't lie to me. All right. So sometimes you'll see attached to the front, right? And they kind of like make the lens look bigger. And sometimes it's like a pissing competition. But the hood is to cut down on flare, lens flare. So if you are out at a sunny day, this hood is supposed to make sure that you have enough shade over the actual lens so that the sun glare doesn't affect your picture. So sometimes you'll see pictures with like a circle or chromatic distortions. It's because they didn't have a hood and they didn't protect the lens from the sun. All right, so that's, you know, don't throw that away. For those of you who buy lenses like, I don't know what this hood is for, don't throw that away. Also, don't use it indoors. It's a surefire way of showing that you're a newbie. All right, so the last thing that I am going to show you is extension tubes. Extension tubes are exactly what they sound like. They extend the lens away from the camera, all right? And so as you can see, these are 3 extension tubes and they are 3 different lengths. So they extend the lens away from the camera. And effectively what that does is extend the photo length, right? And so if you are trying to do any kind of macro photography, what is macro photography? It means when you take pictures of something really small, or you need to get really close to something, extension tubes are your friend. So for instance, when I do photography for weddings and I'm taking pictures of the rings, or I'm taking pictures of a garter, or I'm taking pictures of the watch or something, and I want to get really close to it, the focal length on a 50 does not allow me to get right. So if this is my subject, the focal length on a 50 does not allow me to get this close to the subject. It's probably closer to this. This is about as close as I can get to my subject and still be in focus. Anything closer is too short of a focal length, which is the true definition of what those numbers are. Like I said, you can, that's what the focal length really refers to, but the shorthand is how wide of a scene you can see. But again, the 50 allows me to get this close. If I put an extension tube on the back end of the camera, at the back end of the lens, and put it on the camera, I shorten my focal length. So now I can get really closer. And the larger one of these, the closer you're able to get, right? And so now you can take pictures of ants. You can take pictures of a ring. You can take pictures of your toenail. You can take pictures of a hair, right? Because you can get right up on the subject because you have added an extension tubes. These are invaluable. I don't know how I shot weddings before I found out about these things. And a lot of people won't tell you about them because sometimes people feel like it's cheating. It's like, well, you should just go buy a macro lens. Okay, you give me the money to buy a macro lens. I'm going to buy extension tubes. All right. So that's the basics of the lenses. Like those are the numbers that you need to know. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me. There are a bunch of other types of lenses. There are tilt shift lenses. There are macro lenses, as I mentioned. There are super zooms and things along those lines. And the conversation can go on and on and on. There are also lots and lots of information about the glass that's actually inside, whether it's coated, how many pieces of glass there are that are refracting the images. And so those are all conversations that you can dig into. But if you're just trying to find a lens and you're trying to figure out, all right, this thing says 70 millimeters or 80 millimeters, what does that really mean? It means that it's a short focal, angle, or a small angle in terms of the scene that you're going to be able to look at. And it means that you can't get really close up, right? That's all it means, right? And you can dig into like how that works out, but that's really what it means. And if you're looking at a prime versus what it means to have a variable lens, now you know, right? Again, if you got a tip, leave a tip. The Cash App is $ Hayden, M as in Michael, Greene with an E at the end. And this has been Photography with Hayden. If you have any further questions, please leave me a DM and I'm happy to answer any questions. Also, these are going to be posted on the YouTube channel. So Google Hayden M. Greene, and hopefully I will come up and I'll put the information also in the chat. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Y'all stay safe out there, and I will see you next week.